Hey guys, we are in Acts chapter 1. We're going to read verse 1. All right? It sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? It says, the former treatise I made, O Theophilus, of all that Jesus began, both to do and to teach. Now, Theophilus, we don't know for sure, who that is. We have some ideas that maybe he's writing, that Luke is writing to someone in an authority in government. Theophilus, with especially the Theo and Theos, and all of those things that kind of point to a religious, someone who believes in somebody of faith. They believe him to be in a high position. Luke is writing to that particular person, and he says this. He says, this thing that we have here. He says, treatise that I've made. He says the past thing that I wrote. He said when I wrote Luke, I was talking about the things of Jesus. He's kind of leading into this process of, now he's going to talk about what the early church was about. And Paul and the conversion of Paul and all those things. And here's the thing, what we end up learning. He's like, look, I talked about what Jesus had done, and I talked about all of the miracles that he did. And I talked about, and he did this through interviews and talking to disciples as such. And now he's going to walk through, he's going to tell the story of the book of Acts and him actually walking with Paul and learning from Paul and probably hearing the stories of Paul and them talking back and forth, but him actually living a lot of it, but seeing the early church and what they were doing. So the book of Acts is a way for us to look and see how the early church did things. Now, there are some things that they did that we no longer do. There are some things that they did that we still do. We certainly fellowship. We certainly spend time with one another. We certainly participate in communion. We certainly learn the scriptures. But think about this. Luke is saying, hey, I'm going to let you know that he actually shows us that, man, the early church had it tough. He shows us in the book of Acts that the early church was, and God uses Luke to show us that the early church was persecuted. The early church was not cared for at all. And it's very similar to today. A weak church and a weak back church is not persecuted. It's the church that tells the truth. This is the church that stands for truth and morality that has the tough times. But Luke is simply saying, he says, look, the former treatise I made, O Theophilus, of all that Jesus began both to do and to teach. He said, I taught you about Jesus, and that I taught you about Jesus there. He said, now I'm going to teach you about the church of Jesus, how we do this, and how we should be active, and how we should be on fire for him. He says, I've told you about that. Now we're going to start a new chapter, and that new chapter is, what about the church that Jesus created, the founder of the church, all right? The groom of the church one day. Let's talk about the church, the bride of Christ. And so I talked about Jesus, and now let's talk about the church of Jesus, and certainly the things that Jesus would do through the church in the book of Acts. Man, get into the book of Acts, learn about the early church, learn about their courage and their fire and their zeal. Get into it, study it, and study it with everything you got. Because, guys, I'm telling you, tough times are coming for the church, and the church has got to be ready. Love you guys. Bye-bye.